Hello goblins, it's Chris, Eldritch Pipes. Don't know if you can hear that. It has just been non-stop rain the entire day. It's quite nice being in the workshop with the rain pattering on the roof. Something comforting about it. What a crazy week it's been. Nothing has gone to plan this week. It has just been trying to troubleshoot all over the shop. So, I'm going to natter about a few things before we get to this week's pipes. I've got a new briar chuck. Now, to me that's a really exciting thing. I don't know what you guys will make of it, but as a pipe maker we face a really particular kind of problem. Although there's lots of ways of going about pipe making, there's no one solution to anything. So if somebody says, oh, in order to do this you have to do that, there'll be 10 other pipe makers saying, well, I do it another way. And the other pipe maker will go, okay, I didn't know. But a lot of us use metal lathes. Many use just wood lathes, but a lot of us use metal lathes, and I do. The upside of a metal lathe, well, there's a few. You don't have your actual hands against the turning thing, which, unless you've had lessons, unless you've got someone teaching you how to use wood turning tools, it's a fairly hazardous occupation. And the metal lathe really allows for a lot of precision. The downside against the wood lathe is that for any wood lathe you can buy any number of different styles of chucks that will just like screw on the thread of the headstock and away you go. That doesn't work for metal lathes. When you buy a metal lathe, it usually comes with a 4-jaw chuck and a 3-jaw chuck. And that's it. And to get a chuck made for your metal lathe is an expensive endeavour. It's an expensive endeavour. You just can't buy them. They have to be made bespoke to your lathe. So it's a whole thing. And so pipe makers are always trying to come up with ways of getting around this inconvenience. And for a while now, there have been several attempts at making briar chucks. Admittedly, most of them are focused on wood lathes, but a few have taken the metal lathe into account. So, and I just had a new one delivered today, in fact. So I'm going to take you through my small museum of briar chucks. Now, two are the same. And this was the very first one that I ever bought. Actually, I think it was that one. You'll see why. There's not too much difference, isn't it? It's basically the same thing. So, you can see what's going on here. This part goes into your 3-jaw chuck on your metal lathe. And then you tighten the screws and these clamp onto your piece of briar. And this is really good. It was really excellent. I used this for 2 or 3 years. You have to dial in the distance yourself, so you have to center it yourself, which is kind of a frustrating process, but ultimately it does get you like bang center. So it's hand adjustable in that sense. The downside to this particular one is that the body is aluminium, and so what happens is, in the end, these screws wind up stripping the thread inside these guys, and so this is actually a dead chuck. And at the time, these were the only things available, so I bought another one and wound up stripping the threads on that one as well. So really good design, but far from indestructible. In fact, I had a friend who managed to fix one of them with a helicoil, and that was a good fix, but it was never quite the same, and that was the same with the other one as well. So then, after that, our Chinese friends started designing some chucks. And these were really interesting. Here's the first one I got. Now, this is really cool. It's first of all, it's all steel, so this isn't wearing out anytime soon. It's also self-centering. I don't know if I can make it turn. Oh yeah. Self-centering. And so that's really cool. You don't have to spend 10 minutes or 20 minutes centering a block. I tell you, centering. I mean, it was a thing in itself. It wound up being a skill, dialing in, the screws. But having self-centering definitely is a time saver. The only issue with these, well, there's two. The first part is that you see these squares, these faces. On this iteration, these are really grippy, really grippy. If you could feel them, they're like just super grippy. All those like square, sharp. They are quite sharp edges on all the squares, and so it really grips the briar. And what that actually means is it can easily grip the briar in an off orientation, and that happened a number of times. So it had to be like double, triple check that it actually was gripping the briar squarely. And the other thing is that because the gripping mechanism is actually down here, the lead screw is down here, the pressure is being applied from the bottom, so that the moment you put a block in there, they want to give that way. Not much. These aren't like super loose or anything, but they do go like that, just a little. So this is kind of like version 1 of that design. Didn't really use these grub screws. You can use them, but I didn't. The next one I got of that was this fellow. This is designed by Lu Zifeng, a pipe maker, who I've talked about. Now you can see there's a couple of improvements. These pieces are wider at the base, so there's less flex in them. And also, these faces are much less grippy. They're almost smooth. So the briar really just sort of like sits really nicely in them. You could say the same, I wouldn't call it a design flaw, but it's just a consequence of the design, is that it still wants to go like that, but it's much less noticeable on this one. That's the screw around which they sort of like come together. And then the one I got today is this guy. So you can see now in this iteration it's got a flare at the bottom, obviously to really counter any leaning over. I haven't tried this one yet. I will be putting this one to use not next week. Next week is half term with the boy. That's my phone going off. But very soon. So excited to try those out for sure. And those are my briar chucks. Now, moving on to pipes. Last week I said this week would be a very interesting pipe. Well, there will be some interesting pipes, but not the pipe that I was going to make this week. The pipe that I was going to make is still in resin, as you can see. And I'll tell you the reason why that is. When I cast this first, I cast it last week, the resin, the briar wound up floating in the resin because I'd kind of got myself out of the habit of making these. This is going to be a Viking horn. I'd been making snails, and in fact the last 4 if not 5 resin pipes that I've been making have all been snails. And the snails don't need these little blocks because of the particulars of the snail. I pack that briar in with clay, and the clay does the double job of protecting the plateau, but it also wedges the briar in place so it doesn't move. So by the time I came around to doing this one, I'd forgotten about putting blocks in and then a bit of tape goes over. So I didn't use the blocks. I just put the briar in, actually with a little double-sided tape on the bottom, but it wasn't anywhere near enough to keep the briar down. And the briar floated to the top. So I spent a whole day sanding the briar out of the resin again, and then have to recast it. So Johnny, your pipe is next. That. Yeah. So yeah, mistakes still get made. So to this week's pipes. Right. This, for those of you who've seen this design before, it is blackthorn billiard. This is actually more or less a redo of a pipe that I did for the 4 Horsemen set, and it's done with the amber resin. So it's carved and then sandblasted for a nice rugged effect. This one's even got a little plateau on the rim. Really interesting pipe to make this, sort of trying to reveal the billiard shape around the black thorns is just quite fun. just a nice little rustic looking piece. The customer doesn't even know this one's finished yet because it was raining so much. I haven't had a chance to take the photos and tell Richard that his pipe is ready. Tomorrow I'll tell him. Now, this next piece, I don't have a design for this. This kind of like came out of nowhere. I've been making many acorns recently, which are small, delicate pieces. And I really needed to do the antithesis of that. And I suppose in the past I'd kind of do large pipes, because I have made large pipes. Viking horn is a large pipe. I either make large, substantial pipes, or I make small, elegant pipes. I kind of wanted to mash that up and do a stout, small pipe. And I wanted to try a new stem style as well. So I just grabbed a block, drew a shape on it, and went with this. And I'll show you. I'm calling it a stout Dublin. And I kind of love this piece. Just because I've not done anything like it before. It's just like really, really chunky bowl, really sort of wide diameter. It's like a 23 diameter shank, because I wanted to utilise almost the full width of my large rods. Masses of plateau on the rim. Did a smooth chamfer on the tobacco chamber. Used the earth and ivory resin, which is just champion. That's blown out. What happens if I come back? No. Oh, that's better. That's really cool. And I wanted to try this style of stem, this kind of, I don't even know what the name is for it. Obviously it's a saddle stem here, but it comes off like this bevel here. This is not a shank extension, this is all the stem. So it kind of like comes to a bevel, comes to like a sharp stop, and then we get a saddle stem coming off that part. Quite tricky to make the first time. This is the first stem of this style that I've made, and just thinking it through, I had to really slow down and think about it. Really look at the ring grain on that fellow. Just masses of ring grain. So I couldn't be more pleased with. Oh yeah, did an interesting thing, and I was talking to some other pipe makers about it. I had sort of two ideas about how to treat part of this. Because it was kind of this chunky, stout design, I didn't want to round the edge. I felt it would make it a bit blobby, feel a bit undefined. One idea I had was to just make it, is it clear on this side? Sort of come to a point here. But in fact what I did was just do a chamfer off that, if you can see. It's like an angle. So in a way, it's like the shank comes to an end here, and this line comes to an end here, and then it just seems to add to its sort of chunky feel. And I haven't done anything like that before, and I was interested to what people were going to make of it. There we go. Stout Dublin. I feel like I need to make at least another one of those. Very Yeti inspired. In fact, I nearly had to ask Micah for his forgiveness, employing a lot of his touches. So sorry, Micah. But it was just the perfect pipe I needed to make to sort of like make me feel like I was doing something new. All right. That's it for this week. There won't be a This Week's Pipes next week, I don't think, unless something crazy happens and I manage to make another pipe in between going out with the boy and throwing sticks and that kind of thing. But I imagine I will be back next week, week after next. So until then, do take it very easy. Your loyal pipe maker.